Hey folks and friends, drummers, thanks for tuning in. Today we talk about the new expansion packs for Superior Drummer 3 and Easy Drummer 2, the Decades SDX and the big band EasyX. This library is absolutely mind-blowing. I can already tell this is probably the best drum sample library I ever heard in my life. Without further ado, let's jump into it. So welcome again to the review of the Decades SDX by Schmitt, the latest expansion pack for Superior Drummer 3, and Toontrack brought out on the same day, released the EasyX version, so the younger brother of this pack, which is called Big Band EasyX. This is how it looks. In this review, I will concentrate on the Superior Drummer version because the EasyX version is always like a slightly lower footprint, less instruments, less articulations, pre-processed a bit, but I will tell you which instruments in the Decades SDX will appear in this pack as well. So without further ado, this is the pack. And before we start, we need to talk about Schmitt. For every one of you who don't know who he is, you should check him out. Schmitt is, if the word legend has a meaning in audio, then it's Schmitt. And I couldn't describe it better than Toontrack did it themselves. Just like look at the numbers, 27 recordings, 160 gold platinum albums, 23 Grammy Awards, and he's still to this day the only audio engineer in the world who has his own star on the Walk of Fame in Los Angeles. And just reading this chapter here, scrolling through his discography is even more daunting. His hands and ears have literally shaped our collective music history, from now immortal icons like Ray Charles, Frank Sinatra, Sam Cooke, Madonna, Michael Jackson, Quincy Jones, Barbra Streisand, Paul McCartney. Al has worked with them all, and it's absolutely mind-blowing. The moment you are working and thinking about music and you deep dive into production, all that stuff, Schmitt is really, he's the man when it comes to audio recording. When he started, they even the equalizer hasn't been invented so far. So this is when I heard like the first rumors that Toontrack is working on an expansion tech with Schmitt, I was absolutely thrilled, and I can tell you already they absolutely nailed it with this pack. So what do we have here? It's the approach from Toontrack with Schmitt was more or less to capture decades, hence the name, of work by Schmitt. So some of people like around had some kind of like concerns that it's just going to be a, let's say, big band swing pack, but they really captured every genre, every decade Al has worked in. So it's a completely amazing what they did here. So let's start with the instruments. You see we have Slingerland, two different kick drums. We have Leedy. We have a rather modern Pearl MX, so the Maple kit from Pearl. A Yamaha Maple Custom from the 90s, and Ludwig Hollywood from the kick. We have, I think, 12 or 13 snare drums. Some of them are really special, and I'm going to talk about this in a few. We have several sets of toms, and I will play some audio examples. And we have some very fantastic cymbals. You see, we have a pair of Zildjian Avidis from the 40s. Really, it is like those cymbals. The German name Frank Gegerle, he made a special treatment to the cymbals, and they did this with crash cymbals as well. So on the left side, on this spot here, we have either a Paiste crash cymbal or two different 8-inch splash cymbals. On the main crash, we have 4 different options. Some of them are sampled with brushes and felt metals, and this goes for the instruments as well. In the middle position, we have another splash. Secondary crash, 18 to 21 inch. We have 4 different ride cymbals. And on the right side, we have another 20-inch Paiste crash cymbal. So the setup, 4 toms, up to 4 crash cymbals, ride, and 1 or 2 splashes. It's really, I mean, they didn't went overboard with this like in some other packs, but it's really about the sound. And before I start, let me just play this groove for some seconds. This is a default kit. In the mixer channel, you see nothing happened so far. So just listen to the default kit right out of the box. Drums from the 40s. As every drummer knows, and most audio engineers knows, and maybe some other non-drummers know, the older the drum, the better for the sound, because all the moisture went away from the shell, so you just have the pure sound. So having drums from the 40s is just mind-blowing. And I know that like a lot of metal rock guys are now watching and saying like, yeah, but this is another like jazz thing, I want punchy drums. Don't be misled by the names. As I always say, it's really about the tone, especially using all the features within the software Superior Drummer 3. You can shape the sounds to whatever direction you want. So before we talk some of the presets and some of the special stuff that they put into this pack, let me just show you another drum kit here. So let's go to the 80s rock and fusion kit. This really captures the needs of modern pop rock drumming. The kit is a slightly modern Pearl MX, so it's a maple kit. This kit, like this actual kit that you see here and they sampled, is owned by Steve Ferroni, famous drummer. You should check him out. He worked, for instance, with Eric Clapton. So this really captures the need of modern drumming. So let's have a listen on that. And as we loaded up this kit, I need to tell you the story here. This 6.5 by 14-inch Ludwig Black Beauty, it comes with several Ludwig snare drums, but this special snare drum, because Al Schmitt, in case you didn't know, he was the responsible engineer and producer or engineer on Toto's famous album 4, which included the world hits Rosanna and Africa. So every drummer around the world knows the Rosanna Shuffle, played by famous legendary Jeff Porcaro. And this snare drum, like this that you see, or here, is the actual drum Jeff Porcaro used on that particular album. So it's not another Ludwig Black Beauty from the same area, it's the exact same actual snare drum Jeff Porcaro used on this tune. So if you ever wanted to have a Jeff Porcaro snare in your sound, here you go, guys. So I can play you the groove that comes along with one of the famous MIDI packs. And by the way, all the MIDI stuff and the sampling of this Decades was played by Norman Gaschke. He already sampled Superior Drummer 3, the core library, an amazing drummer. When you see some of the videos, and I highly recommend, by the way, like every single expansion pack, go to Toontrack websites, scroll through the product page they made for this, for each and every product they release, but especially here the Decades, you find a ton of information, nice interviews, a lot of information, videos, tutorials. So it's an amazing site. I highly recommend checking it out. So, but here's the groove with the kick, with the snare from Jeff Porcaro, and here is Rose Anna. And they even sampled Paiste cymbals, which Jeff played as well in the 80s. So this is amazing. And another kit that I just wanted to show you is the 70s kits, which they covered with towels. And the love of detail from Toontrack is really amazing. I will show you some pictures while I'm talking. They even captured the same color or the same look of the towels they used to dampen down the drums. So the love for detail from Toontrack is second to none. I really love this, but I really love the sound of this kit. So if you want that funky 70s dry sound, here we go. What I need to mention, though I know that not a lot of guys use this, is when it comes to brushes, because sampling drums, a lot of companies do sampling drums. Toontrack is really kind of like the market leader. They really like set the bar incredibly high with sampling drums, but you really hear the difference and the love of detail when it comes to sampling brushes. And just like, though the groove is not made for brushes, but let's listen just quickly on the level of detail you hear in this pack. You will find some dedicated jazz grooves in the MIDI pack that comes along with this SDX. So really highly recommend to check that out. Fantastic job, Toontrack. I'm literally blown away by this pack. So you see in the drum kits, all of them are listed here. You can pick them, all of them come in the default state. But this time Toontrack really went crazy with the presets that come along. And Schmitt himself made some presets. So just let's load up one of the, let's say, ballroom swing plates. And what you will see when you go to the mixer section, I will talk about the channels they captured here, you will see there's not really much going on here. And if I just switch to, let's say, the ballroom swing pre-delay, you will see again, nothing happening so far. And there's a funny story that when Toontrack asked Schmitt to do some presets and he came back with those settings, they were kind of like, let's say, irritated in a good way, to say like, well, that's maybe not really a preset, or that maybe it's too less, but this is the way Schmitt used to work. It's really, really incredible how less he's processing the stuff he's working on. And I mean, 27 Grammys speak for themselves. This man really knows this business. He comes from an area where you don't have equalizers, where he changed the sound just by changing the microphone, or like the kind of microphone, or just like moving the microphone 1 foot away from the drums. And it's all about balance. He just slightly changed the faders here, added like a tiny bit of EQ, some reverb, using the reverb that he uses on Capitol Studios, where they recorded in, by the way, and always like a touch of this 670 compressor, which comes with Superior Drummer. So let's have a listen on that. So maybe another one. Let's go to the Broadway Hall. Again, nothing much going on. It's sometimes just like maybe the snare going to a reverb and just like slightly compressioning the whole drum bus and then touching some faders to balance out the level. And for the rock guys, let's go to the Rock and Fusion plate, which is again the Pearl MX kit from Steve Ferroni, which is awesome. And most of the time the Pearl kit is combined with the Jeff Porcaro snare, as I call it. It's not his like own his own snare. They rented it from the Drum Doctors, I think, in LA. So there's this cool story that the Drum Doctors, this rental service for drums, always brought that snare to recordings because Jeff Porcaro was always asking for that one snare that sounds so great. So this has the nickname the Lucky Black Beauty #1, or the one, because this is the snare Jeff Porcaro always wanted for his recording. So let's jump to the famous groove that comes along. Toontrack, the presets on Toontrack were personally crafted by Matthias Eklund, head of sound design, and I think one of the founders of Toontrack. You've seen him plenty of times in some videos. So Toontrack really did the step of really creating like, let's say, a common preset. So you really have the fantastic variety of either going with the really, really low footprint Schmitt sound, which is great, and you can either use it as it comes right off the box, or you can process it further if you want so, or you go to Toontrack, which adds more stuff. So let's start here with the first, which is called a bit compressed. And you see already some more stuff is going on here using the Ludwig and Ludwig calfskin hats on the toms. And just like for the sake of showing it, let's go to the valve to tape kit, which again is the Pearl, I didn't know. So let's check what's going on here. See, everything is going to this valve distortion box, some tape, and the drum bus here, compression, and a punch exciter. So I assume this is going to be rather punchy. I've listened and I've worked with a ton of drum libraries in the past, and for every one of you following my channel for the last 4 or 5 years know that I own probably too much different drum libraries, but this really stands out in terms of sound quality. You really need to listen it on your own headphones, and I assume you're watching good headphones right now. The versatility of this drum pack, the level of detail, the realism of sounds is really second to none. Hardly heard anything. Probably I never heard anything like that before. And I don't think that you need another drum pack here, because with this per kit you can do everything from rock to metal. With the ballroom kit, you can, let's change maybe to the Broadway kit from the 30s. You can create this jazzy 50s, 60s, even the Beatles sound. So there are no limits when using this library. It's really, really amazing. Talking about the mixer, so let's change to the default setting here. You see it's fairly compact comparison to some other libraries where you have like 27, 28 or 30 channels. Al just decided to put one microphone on the kick drum, which is rare. Usually most of the SDX come with kick out, kick in, at least 2, but just one. So that was his decision. Classical snare top, bottom microphone, hi-hat, rec toms were recorded directly. We have an overhead, and then it's interesting because the front, left, right is basically the stereo room. The center articulation is a mono microphone. Combining them, you have a Decca tree. So this classical, coming from the old days, I think Blackbird Studios doing this is a lot, is putting up 3 different microphones. So you have like, as I call it, the Decca tree, so 3 room microphones capturing the same sound. You can just use the center microphone, of course, for a more mono ambience. And then you have some other surround channels, which is surprisingly modern. You can use those channels to create up to 9.1 surround system. It's not that, let's say, extensive like they did with the core library of Superior Dawn, where you can add the channels up to 11.1, but if you wish so, you can do. And the reverb channel here, this is always great when they put in a dedicated reverb channel. This took advantage of one of the reverb halls, I think, or plates they have at Capitol Studios in the same building, which Al uses for decades right now. So let me just show you how this sounds with this groove going on here. So I will load the samples from this reverb channel here in the upper right corner. So just load maybe the snare and the toms. As always, even for those surround channels, as already described in one of my videos about the 11.1, you don't need to create 9.1, you can use them just as common stereo room microphones, because that's technically what they are. The level of detail is even captured, or it's captured in the size you see here in the top right corner. Now, as I've loaded every single room microphone with all the samples included, it sums up to already 5 gigabytes of pure sample data. So your computer needs to be rather powerful, because it's just the samples now loaded into RAM. My computer has 32 gigabytes of RAM, so I can handle that. But if you're running a, let's say, a MacBook Air, MacBook Pro, or a Windows computer with just 8 gigabytes of RAM, you might run into some issues. So there are things, options you can change that, and you can decrease the footprint, but just to be aware of that. So here we go. This was my review of the Decades SDX from Toontrack, or from Schmitt for Toontrack for Superior Drummer. I really think that Toontrack set the bar again a level up with this library. It's really outstanding what the guys are doing in the last month, and to get Schmitt, the true legend Schmitt, to work together with them to give to the world his signature drum sound is absolutely mind-blowing. I have to admit, and you probably heard in my review, that I'm a big fan, a fanboy, obviously, of Schmitt, because when you touch your first equalizer and you like really dive into audio engineering and production, you will stumble upon his name, because this man really defined the music as we hear it today in the modern world, at least. So Schmitt is really an outstanding and a unique legend in audio history. So thanks for watching, guys. If you have any questions about this product, leave a comment below. What do you think about the Decades SDX? I appreciate every reaction. Again, at this point, thanks to Norman Gashker from Toontrack and to Toontrack itself for giving me a free copy of this SDX to make the review. You know, I'm not biased, I'm not endorsing anyone, but in this case, this library is simply so good, I couldn't just tell any critique, because I found nothing. So really, thank you, Toontrack, again, appreciate that, and thanks for watching, guys, and see you next time. Bye-bye.